Welcome back to another video, an MD in Ireland. My name's Haley, and this video will be about recruitment and CV preparation. So, first, you need to make sure that you have centralized communication. I personally like secure and private platforms, and so I used Proton Mail, and I found that very useful. Please note that a lot of recruiters will use WhatsApp, so I did do a lot of texting and calling through WhatsApp, and I would suggest downloading that app as well. And lastly, make sure that you have some sort of application on your phone that can spoof an international number. I used Phoner. The reason you need this is because a lot of times when you're trying to call the Medical Council of Ireland or any other specific Irish located entities, it will block US numbers, and so having an international UK or Irish number through something like the Phoner app can be helpful when you're trying to contact them to talk about your application status. So in Ireland, there are many different recruitment services. They act as independent corporate entities. They're not necessarily funded by the government, but they do work directly with them. So you do have a wide selection of choices for which recruitment agency you want to go to. It is important to note that in Ireland, these agencies have to be free. So if someone is asking you to pay, then that is probably not the best person to go with. And the second thing to know is typically when someone starts a relationship with a recruitment agency, they stick to that one. They don't shop around with different recruitment agencies while having an established relationship with one. With these recruitment agencies, I personally looked for ones that worked directly with the HSE, which is the Health Services Executive. It is basically the public health service sector of Ireland, similar to the NHS in the UK. And so I looked for recruitment services that were approved and had established relationships with the HSE. Ones that I find that a lot of international doctors, including US doctors, use here are FRS, which is one I used, as well as MatchMedics. There's also TTM and CPL, and then Locumotion is more specific for people who want to be GPs. But there is a wide selection, so please do, look around and see who you'd like to establish with. So what do these recruitment services offer? They can offer many things, and that's why I recommend that you start early. So they can help walk you through IMC registration, as well as CV and interview prep. I personally started connecting with them right before I submitted my IMC application. I would recommend even potentially doing it earlier than that. And establishing that relationship, because headhunters are really important in Ireland in general. If you can show up in person, if you have someone representing you in person, that is typically more successful than you trying to email and kind of be this virtual persona. And so headhunters are really important. They can do also compliance. So compliance basically means helping with government permit applications, sourcing all of the documents that you need for that, as well as any Garda vetting, Garda being the Irish police. So you do have to get vetted in order to work here, and they can help walk you through that process in addition to the moving piece of things. As I mentioned in my previous video, in Ireland there are hiring periods for doctors being January and June. I personally, unfortunately, when I had gotten my registration all through the IMC approved, it was in the middle of one of those hiring dead zones. And so I had a lot of issues with my with finding employment during that time, and I did end up also looking on my own. So there are some websites that you can use if you're wanting to also look for positions on your own outside of just the recruiter. Those websites are the HSE.ie, as well as IrishJobs.ie, ie.indeed.com, and then lastly there's also MedSource.ie. right, so the CV guide that I made, I put in the description below. It is free to use. If you want to use it, if not, that's no issue. I'm going to go a little bit into the CV itself and walk you through the guide in this next part of the video.
Hi there. So this is the CV guide that I've created. You should be able to find a link in the description of my video if you want to use it. Again, it's just a suggestion. Take what you like, leave what you don't. I based it off of my own CV that I created when I was reaching out to different recruiters and job positions, as well as the CV guideline by the Irish College of GPs that they recommend for the Category E specialist application. So, two birds, one stone. It will also help you when you are eventually preparing that packet. So, at the very beginning, you include your name as well as your IMC number. You should be able to get that IMC number off your portal the moment you create it. You don't have to submit the actual application or get it approved before that IMC number is issued. Also include your email and whatever phone number you use on WhatsApp, as that is the primary communication method for a lot of the recruiters. So you don't need to include everything that I've put in here, but these are just suggestions. One thing that I did include was a personal objective statement, just kind of describing key attributes of myself, that I'm early career professional and I'm highly motivated, and I work well in a team, and I'm passionate about family medicine, etc. And so that is an option for you if you want to stand out from the pack. I started with my education. They like it in chronological order with most current first. And so, here I listed residency education, post-secondary, like your doctorate. And then, for me, it was a bachelor's of science, but whatever college degree. And then professional positions. So, it's kind of interesting in Ireland. So as I mentioned in a previous video, residency isn't really a thing here in Ireland. It's kind of like you do 4 years of different GP trainee roles post their equivalency of medical school. And then they kind of will put, intern, GP trainee, senior house officer, blah, blah, blah. There's a bunch of different words. And so it is important to kind of break down your residency so they can kind of understand how it equates to the Irish medical training. Start with the most recent position that you hold, explain what it is. When I initially was doing this, I was including things like inpatient or outpatient, but I quickly learned that they don't know what that means. That's not terminology that's used here. Oftentimes they say, in hospital or in surgery. Surgery here means just clinic, outpatient, basically. So like a GP surgery would be just an outpatient clinic. Explain, what setting your position is in. Is it in a hospital? Is it in a clinic? What kind of ages you see, who your patient population is, if you held a leadership position, such as if you were, a clinical supervisor or whatever it might be, and the types of care that you provide, including, whatever's beyond the bread and butter. So if you are a procedures guy, if you're someone who likes to do the vasectomies or the any other kind of like psychiatric med management that maybe isn't like the typical bread and butter family practice, put that there. And then how many patients you see per day, because I will say Ireland is very high volume, so 15-minute appointments, sometimes even 10 minutes, depending on where you are, and so demonstrating that you can see volume is important. And then I broke down, each year of residency, because like I said, they don't quite really understand what residency means. So, with the third year family medicine resident, whatever you called that, for me, we just call them third years or R3s. Explain specifically that in that position it was a accredited training that you supervised and taught junior doctors, And under one of these roles regarding the residents, mentioned that it met the core competencies laid out by the whatever board you are board certified with, whether that be family medicine or otherwise. And then, of course, we have our 2-year and our 1-year. Eventually, when you are doing the Category E specialist, you will actually have to break out, like, month by month what you did in residency, like how many weeks of inpatient you did, how many weeks of gynecology, dermatology, geriatrics, etc. But you don't quite need it just for this part. So I didn't include that here, but think about getting that ready if you can. Putting your licensure and your certifications, they will often call this medical registration. They just basically mean where you're licensed. So put that, if you are active on the general registration of Medical Council of Ireland, you would put that here. If you have held any physician licenses with any U.S. states, like, Maryland state or whatever, you add that there. And any other specific certifications you may have acquired. You will need either ACLS or BLS certification, depending on what you practice. For me, I needed BLS, but if you're wanting to do hospital work or emergency medicine or whatever, you'll need to do obviously ACLS. Publications and research, specifically for peer review, they like to separate out any kind of quality improvement projects or audits, which are very familiar to us family medicine and pediatric folks. So have a section that's for your peer-reviewed publications and a section that's for your quality improvement. Like I mentioned here, in Medical Council, they often refer to these as audits. So like yearly audits is just like a yearly QI project of like how you can improve your practice. And so they will want you to demonstrate yearly audits eventually when you have specialist registration, so might as well get it started here. Presentations that you might have done, this can include even bedside teaching, etc., any professional society memberships, leadership roles. If you did any service volunteer activities, if not, no worries. Any honors and awards. And then I personally put in a list of procedural skills because, again, like, the training is so kind of scattered and not as standardized here. And so, it's kind of unclear what everyone has learned to do. One thing that I will say pretty much all doctors know how to do here in Ireland is intravenous. So placing IVs, delivering IV medications. That is personally not something I've really had a lot of experience with. I've learned it like once or twice, but then never used it after that. You might be required to do that in your job position. There are courses to learn it here if you have that skill listed here. If not, no worries. But there's, an example of a bunch of different procedures that you can do and any competencies, like I said, just so that they can kind of compare to what standards they have with their own Irish trained GPs. I just listed that just to help with comparison purposes. Any languages you speak. And then the references piece is really important. So these have to be supervising physicians. Specifically from your most recent roles. When you eventually will apply with Category E, you actually have to have supervising physicians from every trainee role and every attending role that you've ever had. But to start, before you even get to the Category E, to start just to get the job, you need at least, I would say, 3. And I would work on getting these people figured out sooner rather than later if you can. So this is an example of what you can include in your CV. And I think this would, prepare you well if you wanted to eventually pursue the Category E specialist application, because it's basically all here. So I I will have this, as I said, linked in my description for anyone who finds it useful.
Thank you for watching this video. For my next video, I'm going to talk a little bit about my process with Canada, and then later on I'll get into the nitty-gritty of what to do while you're sitting and waiting for everything to be approved.